Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining me today as I introduce my book, Behind Closed Doors: Male Experience of Domestic Violence in the Age of Denial. This book is not just a collection of stories or research. It is a call to action, an urgent appeal to rethink how we view domestic violence, and a challenge to confront the systemic denial of male victimization. For decades, society has framed domestic violence through a narrow lens, often shaped by patriarchal norms that portray men as strong and invulnerable, and women as weak and in need of protection. While this narrative has undoubtedly brought attention to the plight of countless women who have suffered abuse, it has also created a dangerous blind spot, one that leaves countless men and children unprotected. Imagine a person Imagine a person walks into a domestic violence shelter. He tells his story, one filled with humiliation, manipulation, isolation, threats, and even physical harm. If this person were a woman, support services would immediately be mobilized to protect her and her children, and rightly so. But because this person is male, his experiences are often dismissed, ridiculed, or outrightly denied. This disparity is not only unjust, it perpetuates a harmful cycle of abuse that affects everyone, including the most vulnerable members of society, our own children. Female experiences of domestic violence teach us that abuse directed at a parent is just as harmful to the children. Moreover, domestic violence is a predictor of child abuse. As such, when the mother is the victim, resources are correctly and swiftly mobilized to protect the mother and the children. In the book, you will read about many men. Despite clear evidence of maternal abuse, these men could not even raise the issue in the court of law. A place, if for nothing else, the truth must prevail. Around the world, millions of children are impacted by what has been described as the epidemic of fatherlessness, a direct consequence of the denial of male victimization. Studies consistently show the devastating impact of such denial as explained in the book. I read, psychologically, children growing up without their fathers often face emotional and psychological challenges, including feelings of abandonment, low self-esteem, and increased behavioral issues. Economically, single-parent households, particularly those headed by mothers, are more likely to face economic hardships. This can result in poorer living conditions, reduced access to education, and limited opportunities for children. Socially, fatherlessness has been linked to higher rates of juvenile delinquency, substance abuse, and academic underachievement. These issues contribute to broader social problems, including crime and economic instability. End reading. Now, yet, despite these alarming facts, male victimization continue to be denied. Consider Denis, an Australian, one of many men whose stories is featured in the book. Denis endured years of abuse, including sexual violations and emotional manipulation, often in front of authorities. When Denis acted in self-defense, fight, fled for safety, flight, or paralyzed by fear due to threats, freeze, these natural responses were rather mischaracterized as evidence of his provocation. In Behind Closed Doors, you will read about men like Tami, a German, John, Cameroonian, who face similar horrors and systemic denial. You will also read about the sexual victimization of boys as young as 14, repeatedly raped by adult women, subjected to reproductive coercion with the sole purpose to trap these boys in the abuse cycle. Tactics that is less acknowledged in male victimization, but readily acknowledged, and rightly so, in female experiences. Reproductive coercion means that before children were even conceived, their fate is predetermined to be used as weapons of control. When these men muster the courage to come forward, they are rather silenced and accused to have provoked their abusers. These stories are not just personal tragedies, they are societal failures. When we deny male victimization, we also deny children the chance to grow up in safe, supportive environments. The frameworks we use today to understand abuse, like the power and control wheel, the cycle of abuse, were developed from the lived experiences of women. They describe the broad spectrum of tactics that constitute abuse, namely smear campaign, weaponizing children, reproductive coercion, and more. But when these tactics are directed at men, societal response is dictated by gender stereotypes that women are weak and emotional, normalizing the behavior than condemning them. On the contrary, the brave women who developed the abuse frameworks have shown us in many ways than one that abuse is not a gender behavior, but a pattern of deliberate actions designed to trap and control victims. The golden principle teaches us that if such actions directed at women are a crime and without excuse, so too it should be for men. Another case you will encounter in the book is the tragic story of Jared Bridegan, killed in front of his child, orchestrated by his ex-wife, motivated by her desire not to share custody. For 6 years, Jared endured relentless abuse. The tactics, once again, are familiar. False allegations, smear campaign, weaponizing the children. From female experiences, these tactics are not provoked, but they are extensions of the abuse once hidden behind closed doors. When non-physical violence didn't work, she escalated to deadly force. Female experiences also teach us that non-physical and physical violence are intertwined, one reinforcing the other and escalates over time. Authorities treated his experiences as mere provocations until it was too late. Investigation later revealed that his death had been planned long before their divorce, confirming what we've learned from female survivors. Abuse isn't random, but calculated. The question we should be asking ourselves is that even if anyone were to subscribe to the notion that Jared provoked his abuse, did it justify violence to the point of murder? The reality is, abuse is coming from a place much more darker: power and control. His innocent children are now growing up without both parents, one in jail, the other dead, with the knowledge that one killed the other. Outcomes that were clearly preventable if only male victimization is taken seriously. And when these children develop mental health issues and behavioral problems stemming from such life-changing traumatic experiences, in shock, we ask, what's wrong with children of nowadays? Rather than asking, what's wrong with us that we have allowed this denial in plain view? This denial upholds patriarchal norms, harming both men and women. Feminism has long fought to dismantle gender stereotypes and achieve equality. Denying male victimization is not only counterproductive to this fight, it undermines the very principles of justice and equality that feminism stands for. By denying male victimization, we also deny the humanity of these men, and by so doing, rob ourselves from the same. Denial of male victimization isn't hidden in plain sight, but rather denied in plain view. In Behind Closed Doors, I propose solutions to dismantle these systemic injustices. Trauma-informed care. This approach requires that we view trauma responses, fight, flight, or freeze, as natural human behaviors to harm, not specific to any gender. They are as natural like the air we all breathe. Restorative justice. We must hold our service providers accountable to invest more in preventing abuse than waiting after the facts. Anti-discrimination approach. We must dismantle the barriers that prevent men from receiving support by expanding support services to everyone, much like universal health care. The anti-abuse model. This proposed framework urges us to view abuse not through the lens of gender, but through the lens of actions. If certain behaviors are unacceptable when directed at women, they must also be unacceptable when directed at men. Further research. We need to understand male victimization better. Issues such as legal abuse, smear campaign, and non-physical violence, actions more prevalent in female perpetration, requires deeper study to inform policies and practices. I hope this book serve as a stepping stone towards equality, justice, and safety for all survivors of domestic violence. I urge you to read these stories of Denis, Tami, John, and many others, not as isolated accounts, but as evidence of a systemic problem that demands our attention and action. Let us challenge the stereotypes and biases that blind us to the suffering of millions. And let us commit to building a world where no survivor is left behind. I hope a hopeful example is New Zealand, where gender inclusive legislation has rather improved the safety of everyone. Thank you for your time, your compassion, and your willingness to confront these difficult truths. I hope Behind Closed Doors inspires you to join this movement for change. Together, we can ensure that every survivor, man, woman, same gender loving, or child, has the support and protection they truly deserve. Thank you. We will go straight away to the question and answer session. And please, if you have some questions, keep them coming so I can try my best to answer. Let me check. Okay, there is already a question. You are saying, okay, let me just read this one loud so that the camera can capture it. How does understanding male victimization lead to greater security for women? Okay, how does the denial of male victimization lead to greater security for women? All right, this is a good question. Well, because we don't have much time, there is actually a chapter in the book which I tried to explain why including men in the struggle to create a safer society for all rather functions for justice for everyone, including supporting the fight for women security when it comes to gender-based violence, which of course affects women. One example that I can give here and now is the case of Molly McLaren. I covered her story in the book. She was a young girl in England who experienced abuse, tried to leave, but was eventually killed by her former boyfriend, Joshua Stimson. And it is well documented on YouTube. I can encourage you to look into those documentaries. It is one tragedy which, if only we took non-physical violence seriously, Molly would have been here with us right now. At every single turn that she sought help from police, she was turned down by the same measure until she was eventually killed. Now there's a foundation that has been put up in honor of her, and they are looking into the case how society can better be protected. But let me just read to you a section in the book which actually discusses more about her story. Here, all right, here's the page. The connection between physical and non-physical abuse is clear, as highlighted by the power and control wheel and similar models. These forms of violence are often intertwined, each reinforcing the other. Non-physical abuse can be a precursor to physical violence, leading to devastating outcomes when control is threatened. This tragic escalation is seen in the just discussed case of Travis Alexander, who endured psychological torment before being murdered by Jodi Arias. Similarly, Molly McLaren was terrorized through stalking, threats, smear campaign, and spying via a third party before ultimately being murdered by her former boyfriend, Joshua Stimson. Molly's attempt to seek protection by reporting to authorities went unheeded, mirroring the experiences of numerous men whose pleas for help in cases of non-physical violence are often ignored. Both Alexander and McLaren had attempted to leave their abusers, only to face escalating violence as their former partners reacted to the perceived loss of control with fatal consequences. These cases illustrate the critical nature of non-physical violence and the danger of ignoring it, especially in male victimization. When society dismisses the impact of non-physical abuse on men, it reinforces damaging stereotypes and leaves a gap in our understanding of abuse. This gap endangers individuals and communities alike. For example, in New Zealand, the 2018 Domestic Violence Act set a significant precedent by adopting a gender-inclusive approach to domestic violence, explicitly recognizing the harm of non-physical abuse and expanding protections to all genders. As discussed later, such policies not only protect individuals but also contribute to a safer, more aware communities. I hope I answered your question. So I am ready for the next question.